Today we're going to talk about when is the best time to do practice, whether this is working out or any other type of physical practice that leads to the skills that develop your mastery. Not all practice is physical, but physical mastery has been studied much more extensively than knowledge work has, which is why it's useful to pull from this world when making informed decisions about when to practice, regardless of what it is you're doing. Knowing that deliberate practice often requires us to push through discomfort and be gritty, the best time to do deliberate practice is whenever you can make it work for your schedule. But the second best time is to base it off of your optimal chronotype and the activity in question. That's why in this video, I want to talk about peak timing for performance through the lens of exercise and working out. Across many domains of mastery, having the nervous system primed for peak output is beneficial to consider timing your practice around. Whether it's archery, practicing a musical instrument, or working on your typing speed. Anything that requires physical movement, it makes sense then that knowing when we can optimize our exercise or workout timing is going to help to use this information to consider how you can optimize that timing as well. So research shows that there are 3 ideal times to work out when your body is most primed for physical activity. 30 minutes after waking, 3 hours after waking, and 11 hours after waking. Having trained consistently for over 20 years, I can attest to the reliability of most people working out on one of these 3 schedules, and I think it's as much because it feels best and works best for their schedule as it is due to optimal performance windows. Those lifers in the gym that are either going to get their workout in before work or after work are going to do it regardless. But the more our lives get set in a rhythm, the more that this becomes reliable too. When I was younger, I could work out anytime and have the energy and capability to train hard enough to adapt and see progress no matter what time of day it was. My brother and I could work 14-hour days moving furniture and then drink a high caffeine pre-workout, hit the gym for 90 minutes, go home and sleep for 6 or 7 hours, and then do it all again the next day at 5 a.m. This youthful vigor doesn't last forever though, and as we get older, this peak timing and as we want to continue on the path to mastery becomes more and more important. Now, when I have a spin class or ultimate frisbee game to go to after 6 p.m., it makes me sweat just thinking about dreading it all day. This isn't actually really true because I love it, but it's a lot harder to get amped up for after a full day of mentally demanding work. Once I get going and push through that discomfort of not being out of my optimal rhythm, those activities are great, but the energy level and the timing to perform is definitely out of what would be my optimal time in the evening. And you might be the same if you're a morning person or if you tend towards a later schedule like an night owl. There's a video here on chronotypes and whether you're a morning person or night owl that will help you figure this out. But it might be the early morning workouts or hard knowledge work that you shy away from if you tend towards more of a later schedule. Thinking about this workout timing and peak performance timing is an important consideration for most of us, whether you want to work out for health benefits or training for a specific athletic event like a powerlifting meet, triathlon, or other sport or physical practice. These 3 times are when our bodies are most physically primed. And if our nervous system is primed to perform, our brain is also likely to follow suit. So you may find that a pure knowledge work activity that you're focused on, demanding very little physical movement, falls out of these periods and lands more in what I call your focus time. But something that bridges the gap between knowledge and physical pursuit, like that playing a musical instrument, may also benefit from the physical dexterity being primed in these time blocks of the day. But there is one time of the day that you still want to avoid doing deliberate practice, and that's what we call the dip. Something happens 7 hours after waking that we want to avoid at all costs for deliberate practice. Somewhere around 7 hours after waking is when the dip occurs in focus. And this makes it more important to take a break to recharge than to try to push through with mental efforts. Most of us intuitively know this because we feel that crash in energy that comes after lunch, but you don't want to go to the doctor during this dip. Why is that? Studies have shown that the detection of polyps during colonoscopies goes down at this point in the day, sometime after lunch, and most of us are better off taking a siesta than trying to muscle through the demanding work with grit. In Anders Ericsson's classic work on deliberate practice, he finds that most of the musicians and athletes on the path to mastery that he studied will take a midday break at lunchtime for a couple of hours before resuming again for more practice in the late afternoon or evening. It turns out the very best performers use this time to take a nap. Now, I've also found that on certain days, if I go to the gym during this dip in energy, it's not for an optimal workout necessarily. Using this after lunchtime, if I don't really feel like taking a nap or I slept really great the night before, is when I will sometimes go to the gym or take the dogs for a walk, because it just gives me a break from the mental work of running a business and doing something physical to just reset so that I have another second wind of a few more hours of work. So some people will hit the gym on their lunch break because this is the only time it works for them to make it work with their busy schedule. And there's nothing wrong with this, but the chances are that training is not a top priority for them and they're only doing exercise to feel good. They're likely not pushing themselves to their full potential. And I can attest to this being the case. I'm never going to the gym at 1 or 2 p.m. with the intention of having maximal effort or trying to set a new PR. When you push through with deliberate practice during this dip in energy, what Daniel Pink calls the trough, it leads to falling out of the ideal timing for the rest of the day. So I think that's important to know, that typically you'll crash prematurely, but if you rest and recharge briefly but adequately, you'll have more left for a second wind during that afternoon optimal timing for performance. You can get away with hard pushes through the dip sometime, but eventually it's going to catch up to you, and performance and recovery will start to see diminishing returns. So this leaves us with some considerations on when is the optimal time to schedule deliberate practice into our days, and when is it best to avoid it and think more about rest and recovery. So a couple of things to take action on. I know this is often easier said than done, but take the time this week to consider what you can do to bring more alignment and optimal timing to that thing that you're practicing deliberately on. Can you reconfigure your workout schedule to match one of these peak performance times? And what can you do to mentally disengage, even for 10 to 15 minutes at lunch, to catch that second wind? Going on your phone and scrolling through social media doesn't count. What are you doing that's less than ideal in these windows of opportunity for deliberate practice that you can tweak even just a little bit? Now that you've brought your performance into these optimal times, check out this video here next for the technique that I use to wrap up for the day so that I never find myself overstressed and overworked.